Right, welcome and thank you once again for joining us on OY Media Scotland. My name remains Samuel Oludari Jirokun. I'll be your presenter and, of course, producer for today. Right on the program today, I have Alagba Femi Odedeyi. Alagba Femi Odedeyi is from the Yoruba Referendum Committee and has always been here on the program assessing and analyzing the situations going on in Nigeria, especially regarding governance. And today he will be looking at the topic for us today, which is Nigeria and the global village. Alagba Femi Odedeyi, you are most welcome on the program.
Thank you for having me once again. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's been a while that we've been on this program due to some technical works. I mean, it's still not yet fully sorted. You can see my background for today. So we are using a temporary location for today's program. But we are just have to keep up with the people because an informed generation will most likely take up their responsibilities as good citizens of the country. Shortly before we went on what we term the technical break, we had a bit of discussion about the new president, called Ahmed Tinubu, that's president. And I think from your analysis of his comment, his program, and of course the support that your group has for the president. You mentioned right before this time that you believe something that you would know, and that got a program on true federalism. Because we had watched a video where he was talking to the governor that without a true federalism, without getting the Nigeria governance structure back into what will see power and responsibility to the sections we have in the country, that the country move forward. Right. The president was sworn in on the 29th of May 2023. So we will not now for the government. What's your assessment of his time so
far? Well, one, we thank God for his safety, physical safety, political safety, and we thank God for the peace that has accompanied the transition and his assumption of office. All the various naysayers about what will happen to him, what will not happen to him, clothing it in what they call prophetic utterances, which actually was scaremongering, and also attempts to discredit the hard-fought and won victory We thank God that all those things are being put to shame. It's just about 30 days that he assumed office. Here is a man who has not held any public office for the past. I think he left governorship of Lagos in 2007 and has been a private, though politically relevant individual in Nigeria and in Yoruba land. So it is a source of joy and happiness, not simply because he's Yoruba. Of course, that's a major part of it, that for the first time since 1979, we
Yeah.
have a Yoruba who is the choice of majority of Yoruba people becoming president of Nigeria. We know what happened to Awolowo in 79. We know what happened to Abiola in 93. And so now, and then we know what happened to even Chifalai in 1999, that uh, it is very unconscionable that some outsiders will have to impose a leader on us, which was what they did with Obasanjo in 1999. So, for the first time since the civilianized, I will call it civilianized military rule, since 1979, we have our choice. Majority of us, majority of Yoruba people, we have our choice as elected president. So it's something to be thankful about and something to be joyful about. Um, I said majority because there are quite a few Yoruba, which is expected, who ordinarily wanted to go on exile. He won the election, but it's all well and good. So now the question now is, having got that far. And by the way, let me say this: when people start maligning him about his what they call his personal ambition, it follows a pattern. I remember in 1993, before Alaja Simbiatu Abiola died. I think she died in 1994, 1995. That was MKO's first wife. She granted an interview where she said that at that time, that was 1993,
Yeah.
that MKO had been planning for Nigeria's presidency 18 years prior. That
Wow.
is, since he had been planning for it since, would that be 1970, 75 or 78, that he had been planning for that presidency. And of course, we know his relationship with Muritala Mohammed. I think that was the period of Muritala Mohammed. So to accuse Tinubu of planning for it is just anti-historical. And if we go back to Awolowo again, when the Nigerian youth movement collapsed, he went, that was I think 1937 or 19 something. He went to London to continue his studies. That was 1944, 45. So that was where he sat down and looked at Nigeria in the experience, within the context of the anti-colonial struggles at that time, and came to the conclusion about the formation of Egbe Omoduduwa and the question of nationalities in Nigeria. So since that time, since the fall or failure of the national youth movement, he had been going through what is to be done, which eventually led to the formation of Action Group in 1951. So to accuse Tinubu of planning for this for the past 20 years is just, it's like turning our back to history. So there's nothing wrong in doing that. So having said that, Yoruba political consciousness is anchored on federalism or restructure. Yeah, let's say federalism. Don't let me use the word restructuring Nigeria because it's an abused word. Not only because we are federalists, even in our history, we remember the Kiriji War between the Ekiti Parapo and the Badon forces and all that. So, for him to emerge as the choice of majority of Yoruba people places a historical burden on him to advance that paradigm, not to impose, because federalism is anti-imposition of us on others anyway, if
Yeah.
we define it correctly, but to free the other peoples, including the Yoruba people, from the shackles of a stifling unitarist structure, which we are practicing. And we all know, I mean, everybody talks about Western region, golden era, and all this and all that. And more importantly, we point this out. We celebrate, that is the Yoruba, we celebrate the existence of Odua investment as an economic behemoth for the West. But you know, Odua investment was the product of farsightedness of people like Mr. C.S.O. Akonde, who was the secretary to the Western state government at that time. When they discovered that the military was going to break up Western states into three,
Mm.
they created they created they created Odua Investment as a holding company for the Western Nigeria Development Corporation, which was in existence at that time. So they created Odua Investment to cover all those companies. Why did they do that? Because you know, at that time, before the creation of the Western state or the regions were contributing money to the center. So these people, from their background, knew that they cannot rely on getting allocations for the center. They have to have their own independent economic base. So they went ahead and ensured that Odua investments came into being. So all the regions at that time had their own development corporations.
Right.
None of them survived the breakup of their regions into different states. It is only in the Western states that you have Odua investment that survived it and still survives it till date. So you can see that everything that we do in Yoruba land generally is anchored on that federalist principle. Yes, there are ups and downs. They mismanaged some, they didn't mismanage others and all that, but it still exists till today, which other regions cannot boast of because they also had their development corporations and nothing came out of it because they thought nothing of getting allocations from the center as a way to run their regions. But we do. So the historical burden on Tinubu is anchored on how to refederalize Nigeria. That is his historical burden, and we hope and we trust that he will be guided aright to do the right things towards that refederalization, because that is the only legacy that he can leave behind. And because we wish him well, because by wishing him well, we are also wishing ourselves well.
Definitely, definitely.
So it is a joint effort for all of us to, and he experienced it as governor of Lagos State. So he, and you know, member of Nadeco and all the rest of it. So I believe that he knows the burden that is placed before him, and by preparing for it, he knows what to do and when to do it. Of course, he's a politician, he will be alliances and this and that, but we should not lose sight of the price just for the sake of having the presidency.
Right.
So, wish him well.
Thank you very much for that. But let's also talk about the federalism before we move away from here,
Yeah.
because that federalism seems to be the core of what the president has always had in mind. I
Yeah.
mean, if one has listened to him from time
Yeah.
before now. Some people have given federalism different additional uh, additional qualification or adjectives and co. So you have genuine federalism, you have true federalism. Um, in your view, because when we talk about federalism, do you think that we can view that federalism from the focus of the regional government that we had in the 60s?
Yes and no. Okay. No, in the sense that of course, the regional governments were limited at that time. We had
Mhm.
four, and everybody was lumped together and so that's the no part of it. But the yes part of it is anchored on his definition. In other words, it is, the regions came about because of the constitutional conferences that were held prior to independence. So they had the Nigeria colony, they had the, I think, Macpherson Constitution in 1951, which sort of was a semi federal institution under which the elections into the houses of assembly were conducted. But the agitations continued up till 1957-58 when they changed the Macpherson to the Littleton Constitution, which formally embraced the regional structure. So essentially, federalism is everywhere in the world. Federalism is a, a system where a federating unit releases some power to the center and sustains that center. And that was what happened in the region. So in those times, the regions, they had a system they called derivation. So what was derivation? The regions make their money from whatever it is they are doing and contribute a certain percentage to the center to run the central affairs. That was why the Western region was the first to have a minimum wage, even within the context of the federation at that time. Western region was the first to increase worker salaries. They were the first to all this pilgrimage and all the rest of it. They were the first to do all these things. I mean, these are in addition to all what we know, first in Africa, and all the rest of it. So, but why are they started their free education policies, and people from other regions were trooping into the Western region to benefit from it. So they were able to do that because they control their resources. So the money they made from cocoa, they instituted the marketing boards, which, by the way, Tinubu has said is going to reintroduce to leverage the purchasing power of the cocoa farmers and still make profit in the world economy. So they did all these things, and from the resources that they gather, uh, they give a portion to the federal government. I think it's in London, or is it in Brazil, or both. The embassy in Nigeria, the Nigerian embassy in London, actually was owned by the Western region government. And in each of the embassies, at that time, each of the regions have their own special agents. So as a Yoruba person from Western region, you walk into the embassy, you go to the agent of your region, and whatever it is you want to do, you do. So that is part of the what they call the coordinate relationship between the national and the subnational. The regional system, the regional government is the subnational, and the Nigerian system is the national. So certain powers were given to the national, defense and all the rest, while we take care of the rest. That was how it was operating. That was how we got our independence, and that was how a lot of our cultural cultural existence were preserved, because the language was preserved. A lot of effort was put into history, not only in Western region, no, because in other places also you also find them preserving their cultural heritage in their own ways. So a federalism that does not address that question, that is derivation, is not federalism. It's as simple as that. What we have now, which they call federalism, which is where all these true federalism, fake federalism, and all the rest come, is in allocation, because gradually, I mentioned the WNDC and the dual investment the other time. The moment the military started creating states, it was a military exigency at the time when Gowon created the 12 states. It was for a military purpose during the Biafra War. But gradually, the more states they create, the more resources they take away from the region to deposit in the center, to the extent that now the center now collects more. I mean, the states now collect monthly allocations from the center to survive. So you can see that is the other way around. So even with what they say they are doing now, you conduct even take the electricity bill that they are talking about now. You cannot establish a company cannot establish an electricity production or distribution entity in Ibadan and Osogbo at the same time. So anyone that wants to do anything in Ibadan is limited to Ibadan. You want to do anything in Iwo, you are limited to Iwo. That doesn't make any sense, economic sense. So these are the kind of things that are factored into the question of federalism and all the rest of it. So we cannot allow those who bastardized that regional system to define federalism for us. So it has to be taken back. So that's what now, whether we call ourselves regions or states or departments or whatever is irrelevant. How many states we want in Yoruba? If every village in Yoruba land wants to be a state, no problem. So all those things are decisions we have to take ourselves. It is not to be regulated like it is in the 1999 Constitution, where even the local governments were listed. So before, even look at the amendment they did, I think last year or something like that, just to change the name of a local government requires a constitutional amendment. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make us, it invalidates our independence, because the purpose of independence is to come out of the hole that colonialism placed on us, that we were denied our existence as a people, we were deculturalized, we were dehumanized, and so the purpose of independence was to rehumanize us, restore our humanity, and become human beings again. So when you deny all those things and then you start dishing out all kinds of others like that, you are simply saying we are not independent. We are still colonies. But the question is, colony of what or who? So these are the foundational issues that must be confronted. So that's why I said yes and no. the no I've dealt with. So, but the yes, so like unlike those who are saying, "Oh, let us go back to the 1960 Constitution. Let us go back to the all those things are they are passe, they are past. We don't need to. All we need to do is to recognize who, if we want a federal structure, who
Yes.
are the federating units, and then let them negotiate the terms of federation among themselves. It has nothing to do with the 1960 or 1963 constitution. Whatever constitution we come up with will be what
Yeah.
we have decided to be with.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So we'll keep tab on the presidency
Yeah,
as he, the president, and of course he's got those that are working with him as they unfold
yeah,
how the federalism is spoken so much about will be resolved. We also believe strongly, and this is just personal, that some of the things that are broken now, which is in which the federal government is heavily relied on for economic activities, some of those things that are being taken out now, especially when it comes to the issue about subsidy and, of course, the dollar swap,
yeah,
the dollar renting. Yeah, that's because these are the areas where
yeah,
there's an heavy reliance
yeah,
on the central government.
yeah.
So, but just in just few seconds, how is it for the central to lose that much power? Because when we talk about federalism, it's about power,
Mhm.
uh, basically moving from the center
Yeah, to
into
the
the federating units.
yeah. There's no loss of power. It's just equalization of power. Say
Okay.
for example, you mentioned naira. For example, let's
Yes.
take that. Naira is a Nigerian currency, which is legal tender in all the federating units. So
Yes.
the value and the purpose of the naira is a federal issue. But
Yes.
what will drive the strength or weakness of the naira is the productive capacity of the federating units. So
Right.
that while we are spending naira in the western region and we have all kinds of economic programs and all the rest of it, it adds value to the naira which the center will present to the world, just like any
Yes.
other asset. So, and if
Yes.
we don't add value and we just keep on messing up, it will also reduce the strength of that naira. So
No.
it's not a question of relinquishing or reduced power. It's a question of equalization of power. And of course, no region will say, okay, we want to determine the value of naira ourselves. No,
Mm.
because the value of the naira is not dependent on the region or federating unit. It depends on the Nigerian economy and its
Economy.
relationship with the rest
Yes.
of the world. So if you have the biggest economy in the federation, that is biggest in terms of wealth, just like we say Lagos is the center of this and this today, that is the
Mm.
richest state and all the rest. So you have a federating unit as Lagos. The economy itself will show up the value of the naira, which Nigeria will now present to the world to negotiate the value of that naira. So there's nothing to fear except those who are fearing that are simply people who want to continue with the allocation method. You see,
Yeah.
equalization, equalization of power. And no regional government will say they are taking over the power of whether we have a prime minister or president or in representation in any international agency, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
No.
So these things are given. It's equalization of power. And nobody will be talking about marginalization. And you don't put us there. You don't put it because your basic existence is already taken care of in your area,
The region. Yes.
in your region. So if you now want to compete at the end, then that's your own business. So and then so it's equalization of power. Uh,
Power.
yeah, and that is what is meant by saying federalism is a coordinate relationship between the national and the subnational. It's a coordinate relationship is equalization of power.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's just move on to that topic as well, which has to do with subsidy removal.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen what has happened so far.
Yeah.
The threat by the trade unions to protest, which from the feelers we had from their meeting with the president, that he said, well, if they want to protest, he will join them.
Yeah.
Because everybody will be protesting against the system that does not deliver actual benefits to the Nigerian people because of the way things have been run. So far, so good. The subsidy has been removed, which obviously he had to implement it because the last government has already tabled it. So he's actually the one implementing it.
Yeah.
Now, the general complaint out there is that before the subsidy is removed, there has to be, they should have put in some palliatives as a sort of a relief for the people. But the president said we need to save first. Is what we save that then we can use, because if we don't save first, then that means we have to keep borrowing to provide those relief materials, and then it becomes a burden and a debt. But it seems that some people do not get it, either from the activities of some of the supporters or the followers of the co-contestants of the president, to maybe the ordinary people out there. And when I use ordinary, it's just to talk about the general people, not in status, that they believe that before this is done, there should be a sort of a relief for the people. But is it possible to actually assess what sort of relief will be, and what sort of relief it will be, the extent of the distribution, and the network to distribute such, if the action was not taken first?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the economy, Nigeria's economy, or let me say Nigeria's intellectuals, not the economy, are to be blamed for this. I mean, it's common sense. If we are going to provide some palliatives before removing it, there must be resources to get the palliatives in place, whatever the palliatives are. Before Tinubu was inaugurated, I think the World Bank or IMF gave Nigeria $800 million loan to cushion the effects of the removal. I mean, that's a loan, no, that's going to be repaid back. So even if, let's even assume that Nigeria borrows $1 billion for palliatives before removing the thing, it's going to be repaid back. So those who enjoy the palliatives are still going to pay it back in other forms. So the common sense thing there is, just like Tinubu did, we have a problem. We have to remove this thing. We have to suffer it first, and then regroup. It's like when a company goes into a financial crisis, they have to look at their books and see where they have run first and stuff. So I'm not an advocate. I don't advocate what they call palliatives because the palliatives simply sustains the subsidy regime. Rather, it is better to go the whole hog and look at what the economists will call the fiscal policies of the government, that will now become beneficial eventually to the people. What do I mean by that? Uh, Again, is tied to federalism. That Nigeria is a rentier state. A rentier state means a state that collects rent or royalties from multinationals to run itself. So we sell crude oil, we collect rent, that is royalties from crude oil, and we share the proceeds among the federal, state, and local governments. And because we are doing that, there is no incentive for the federal, state, and local governments to improve their production, to improve their economic base. I mentioned something about withdrawal investment the other time. So what happens is that when they share the money, when states say that they increase their IGR, internally generated revenue, what the revenue does is to fill the gap between what the state spends and what they receive from the central government. So when they share the money and it's not enough, then the revenue is added into it to make it go round. And that is what is happening. So if the effects of the subsidy removal is going to be ameliorated, and we've had experiences before. We had Shopee. I think that was under Jonathan. We had what else? PTF under, was it Abacha? We've had all kinds of things where they will say that the money they save will go for infrastructural development, and there's no infrastructure that we have seen. So what this one is now saying is that, okay, this thing has been removed. We need to save money. Now, the question is, what do they do with the money that is saved? One, before we even arrive at the value of the money that is saved, the whole question of the rentier economy must be addressed. Because if the rentier economy is addressed, number one, there's no reason to be selling petrol for the same price in Lagos and Sokoto, for example. Number one, the cost of living in Lagos is higher than in Sokoto. So, because of that, if the price of petrol in Lagos is higher, that means the cost of living will be adjusted. Not only petrol, I'm just using it as an example, will be adjusted to that cost of living, which will make Lagos more buoyant and be in control of its whatever development they want to do. I'm just using it as an example. So by the time you now find Lagos, for example, in the Lagos state now, you now find Lagos embarking on such projects as the export free trade, the Lekki trade zone, the international airport, and all the rest on private partnership basis. So they are doing it using part of their IGR to attract investors into doing all those things. So when it materializes, the first beneficiaries of those things will be residents of Lagos. So if you are if you are living in Sokoto and you are paying 10 naira per liter for gas, and the person in Lagos is paying 50 naira per liter of gas, before you migrate to Lagos, and we know that Lagos, everybody migrates to Lagos almost every day, you will think twice,
So,
because the cost of living you are going to meet is going to be different from what you are used to. Now, once that has taken place, a lot of people may even migrate out of Lagos and go back to wherever they come from. So all these things will play out I'm not saying we should, I mean, I'm not saying people should be discriminated against or not. I'm just looking at the economic reality. Because if you are paying 10 naira per liter in Sokoto, your rent is most likely going to be very low. So if you now migrate to Lagos and you are paying 100 naira per liter, again as an example, for and the rent is high, to migrate to Lagos will be a decision you have to take. And then, because of the Lagos will have to take care of itself, because all the migrations into Lagos that has caused overcrowding, that has caused all these things, will be addressed. And then all the various, under the bridge markets and everybody where people just rush into will also be addressed, because the businesses will also be taxed and taxed appropriately. And so they will be able to take care of, the economic environment. So, but all these things, because uh, these things are taking place not in a vacuum. When the erosion started, they started creating states, and we became dependent on the center. Because the center is there, they are able to dole out money to the states to survive. So people didn't feel it. So if you want to reverse it, people will have to feel it. But the problem is, or the issue is, how is it going to be uh, ameliorated palliatively? Let me put it that way. So
Right.
that's why I linked it up with federalism. So
Okay.
and in the Western region, like I said, you have Odua investment. So when you have such enterprise that can provide employment based on its own independent activity, not dependent on the central government, you have a buoyant economy in place. So but for the immediate future, that is, you buy petrol for 100 naira today, and tomorrow morning it becomes 300 naira. So that's an immediate issue you have to address. So how do we address it? Unfortunately, we can't expect the government to give everybody the balance. Okay, give them cash, because that is not going to work. So what we will expect from the government is to ensure that the economy of the state itself, that is the Nigerian economy,
Yes.
including the state economy, is reduced drastically, such that, because one of the things that drive inflation is the availability of cash to spread around. So if and the way to stop that, reducing the government is not just about cutting down on ministries and stuff and all the rest. That's why we talk about derivation. That is, the money you make, or the money that accrues to you, does not go into any federation account. It goes into your account, and you now give whatever it is you agree with to the center, so that how you manage what stays in your account becomes an issue. So that will drive economic development in the various regions. And eventually, whether they increase salaries, they provide rice or beans or palliatives and things like that, eventually all these things will trickle down to the economic life of the people. And then when you talk about transportation, because everything, the money we spend and our economic activities are dependent on petrol. So if Nigeria doesn't sell
That's
crude
true.
oil,
Yes.
Nigeria will
Mm-hmm.
not exist, as it were. So we have to move away from that and
Yes.
ensure that. And so that's why I blamed initially, when I said I blamed the intellectuals or whatever, because these things uh, are confusing to nearly everybody. And those who are in the know are not doing us a favor by explaining the connection. So that's why you find NLC, and it's a standard practice of the NLC. Anything that they consider to be anti-workers, the first item is to go on strike.
Yeah.
We will go on strike, and then they will start all kinds of stuff like that without examining the nature of the problem and
Mm-hmm.
providing a way out for the problem. So, if everyone knows that Lagos is overcrowded,
Yes.
I mean, we all know it.
You
So,
know.
but how do we resolve? And the overcrowding also affects all these things we are talking about. So, even if you want to give palliatives, how many people are you going to give to in Lagos?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you see, part of the beauty of this thing is the Lagos, most of the people that live in Lagos, if there is good transportation, like rail and good roads, people can live in Akure and work in Lagos
Oh,
with a
yes.
good rail line. So if these are part of the plans, and these things can be done only on a regional level, you can't say go and construct a rail line in Akure and I will construct one in Lagos and then we build
Only
them together and all kinds of stuff like that. So what I will say is that there is a need for a re-examination of the economic principles that is driving Nigeria. And, in a sense, there's also a psychological element to it. Why does a senator or local government council chairman need a constituency fund? They will claim that their constituents come to them to ask for money for this, for that, for all this, so they need to take care of them. But why should you put your constituents in the situation where they will have to come to you
to,
to
to
beg for
ask for
money
money.
or
Yeah.
what? So if they are economically self-sufficient to a large
Right.
extent, if they are economically self-sufficient, they won't come to you to ask for money to bury anybody or do their wedding like they claim. So all these things are part of it. In the western region in those days, we had councillors who are not even paid because they have their regular jobs, mostly as teachers and all the rest of it. So all these things, by the time they combine together, they will they are not things that can be decreed into being in one day. But
Exactly.
yeah, but people, when they see movement in that direction, then even if there is no palliative, people will know that something is being done as a long-term measure to address these things. And that is what I expect. We don't need although that's a different subject, too, we don't need a National Assembly as presently constituted to run the country with all the various stuff and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
all these things, and then to even make matters worse, they build commissioners' quarters, ministers' quarters. What on earth are they doing all that for? So that shows you the extent to which the Nigerian state has turned Nigerians into parasites.
Right.
So
Mm.
to address which is not just going to throw money at, but to look at the root and make sense out of it. So now that we are where we are,
Mm.
so I will expect agencies like the NLC and other professional bodies and the rest of it to address these issues,
Mm.
and in a fundamental manner. Instead of just asking for palliatives.
For palliatives.
They said they saved 400 billion naira in 1 month or
Mm.
something like that. I think that's what they
Yeah,
said.
something now.
They
Yes.
said something 400. Now, if we say, okay, distribute the 400 million among the states, how more less than 1 billion will go to, less than 10 billion will go to each of the states. By the time you distribute all the money, you are not going to distribute it equally. Everybody,
No, definitely not.
yeah.
It,
So
it,
all
it,
the states need to be
mm,
addressed, and we have to see it as being involved in another kind of political revolution as it is. And it doesn't come cheap. Yeah.
not at all. Just to back up what you've just said, because if actually a palliative is going to be distributed, it should be according to needs.
Mhm.
And also, there was a video of, I think there are some of the senators or members of the House of Rep. They were talking about a scheme that was done under the name Nigeria Cares, where I think about 3.2 million was to be given to 3,000 people per state. And the names of 3,000 people were submitted as states.
Mhm.
Now, we know, let's say, for instance, Oyo State is maybe about 7 million.
Yeah.
And so actually that 3,000 is not representative of, but even at that, from the claim, uh, the names were submitted and the money was allocated. Now, the legislator that was talking about this, because he said he needs to talk about it so that people will know that it's not them who took the money, but what has happened so far. So he claimed that the fund was released, but one way or the other, the money got to the governors. And then he mentioned about 2 states that when the fund got to them, they changed it to their own states. Instead of Nigeria Cares, they
Yes.
put the name of their own name.
Yes.
And then that the numbers of beneficiaries, instead of about 3,000, that some of the states reduced that number to 300 and 250 instead of 300,000 or 3,000.
Yeah.
They reduce it to 300 and 250. And then the money itself that was meant to be 3.5 million, I think he said what was given was less than a million. And this brings us back to what you are talking about, the structure that has to be set up. And if these things were made within the region, and then whatever palliatives that will be distributed, because we believe that if we are running a sort of a federating unit, if it kicks off, they will have like records,
Yeah.
they know themselves, like there will be localization.
Yeah.
And then they will know who is who and who needs to help and who is able to be traced, which obviously the central government cannot know who is in a bedroom that needs maybe so amount of cup of rice and coal. So they were going to do it as a blanket with the current system we're running.
Yeah.
But if it becomes local, then
it becomes
we see that things, yes.
Yeah. That's the dilemma. Because when officials sit down in their offices and money is just allocated to them, that is what will happen. I mean, they sat down and somewhere Nigeria Cares allocated money to the state, and of course it goes through the governor's office. So the question with the governor, okay, who are my political loyalists and blah 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 blah. So they do everything, they reduce. Say you will not get part of it, and everybody shares. Not the so the problem is people sitting down and collecting allocation from the states. Now, if that were not the case, we're talking about derivation and giving money. So even if the center is going to intervene by providing some relief, it's not going to be a question of sending cash to the governor's office. For example, all these things we are talking about includes education, agriculture, and everything. So each region will look at, okay, what is our need? What is the best way to address this issue? Yes, we need to help people and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's put money into agriculture, for example. Or let's put money into schools, or let's put money. So all that will be channeled, and then the trickle down effects will be there. So, but when the economy is on rent and money,
Yeah.
all they do is how to share the money. And when you sit down to be sharing money, there's no way you can escape that. See, because you didn't, it's not your money. You didn't work for it. The community didn't work for it. The money just came, and then okay, so how do I?
Mm. They
And
call
it's
it government money.
government money, and you are sitting down on your desk. Then you will remember
Mm.
your village people who their name are not there, so you put them there. Because
Mm.
if everyone is supposed to receive 1 million naira and you put a name there and say, "Look, oh, I'm giving you 500,000," the person will jump at it.
Definitely.
So that's the problem that we have to face, and that is also tied to the historical responsibility or historic responsibility of the Tinubu administration that has to be addressed. Because I mean, it's not going to go away. I
Definitely.
was reading some newspapers this morning, and they said the naira has fallen against that. What do they expect? Is it news that the naira falls? It will be news when the naira when the naira
And I
success.
agree, yes.
So,
Mhm.
so all these things are there, and they should provide the context for addressing them, and not just a question of waiting for a pack of rice or something like that, and things like that. We are
Right.
human beings. We are not
Mhm.
animals that can be given, you know,
To be waiting for movie of
for
rights, like they call it.
palliatives. Yeah.
Um, Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the global presence of Nigeria. One thing that I used to remind people quite a lot, that Mandela said, if Nigeria doesn't get it, then Africa is doomed. So there was a summit in France, which was attended by Mr. President. And I think Afreximbank Bank and some couple of people were met, and they discussed about investment. IMF also did, to a certain level, applauded the president for the action he's taking so far, especially with the issue of the subsidy as well as the dollar swap. But some people within the country, including some of the media houses, were saying we didn't see Mr. President. There were televised sessions by of discussions among some of the attendees, but that the president wasn't there, and they believe that insofar that the president did not appear on the televised session, then probably is just somewhere else relaxing. What's your view about this?
Well, if he's somewhere else relaxing, I wish I would have joined him to go and relax. You see, that's what I mean by one of the problems we have in Nigeria is actually caused by our. I will be generous with them, calling them intellectuals, or just educated people. The TV appearance that I saw, I don't know about others, was attended mainly by NGOs, European non-governmental organizations. So how do we expect the president of Nigeria to go to a world summit where other presidents are meeting behind the lines, behind the scenes, and then you want your president to go and sit down among some NGOs on television and start discussing? So it doesn't make any sense. So for me, there's no problem in his not being part of that kind of discussion because there's nothing he can. It's not even diplomatically right. How many presidents of other countries were on that TV show? So what these critics are doing is just extending their animus, their electoral laws, onto the diplomatic stage in a global manner, because there were bilateral and even multilateral discussions. You know, when presidents talk, when they hold their G7, G20, and all these meetings, they don't televise their meetings. They have photo ops where they show them that, oh, they are all there. They will put the 20 of them on stage. They will take photographs. They don't televise their discussions. Why? Because there are a lot of things they will be discussing that are not for public consumption. So when they go to the United Nations and they televise a speech by someone and all that, you don't know the kind of negotiations that has gone behind before the man will get on the podium to make a speech. So it is, I won't call it ignorance, because I'm sure most of the commentators know these things. They just want to continue in their electoral jibes by saying we don't see him on there, we don't see him on this, we don't. There was a guy, there was a president who met with other presidents, and even if he went to France to rest, yeah, okay. So when did he become president? May 29, less than 30 days after he became president. After he was inaugurated on May 29, we had June 12 holiday. After June 12 holiday, we had the Salah holidays. So every month, everything in that month is. So if he went to France, so that's his own couple. So, but seriously, I don't think we should reduce, whether we like him or not, whether we voted for him or not. I don't think we should reduce the presidency to the status of an NGO. If he wants to meet with the NGOs, that's a different kettle of fish. And even if he wants to meet with an NGO, it's not going to be a televised meeting. Is not going to sit in the presence of TV cameras and they start discussing issues right there. When they want to televise it, by the time they want to televise it, they will just be talking about the agreements or the positions they have taken. So it is, I think the people should relax, like President Tinubu said, fọkàn balẹ̀. So they should go and fọkàn balẹ̀, and all these cheap shots, they reduce. I was engaged in a discussion with someone on this issue, an educated person, and he made the same accusation. So I now pointed it out to him. Look at all the attendees. They are all NGOs. Do you expect your president to be there? He said he didn't know. So all he was looking at was that, okay, well, people are on stage and Tinubu is not there. So that is the kind of level, low level, some of our people have sunk, that because of their loss and because of their attitude, they now want to reduce the presidency into an NGO. When the summit will not, I mean, the televised NGO conference will not have taken place if the summit did not give them permission.
Yes.
So you are now asking who gave you permission to come and attend your program, and because you didn't attend, you are saying it is not. I mean, so it's just. I think it should just be dismissed. I mean, the opposition or the
criticism.
should
Right.
just be
Thank
dismissed.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Then let's just move on straight on to the post-election matters, especially the court case going on at the tribunal,
Yeah.
being the challenge to President Tinubu's declaration. His declaration as the president.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite good that in Nigeria we have a structure where an aggrieved person could approach the court to ask for justice in the way we put it. But also, we know that by law, the person has to prove his or her case. So we have two people that have approached the tribunal claiming that their mandate was stolen. It's just one mandate. And the two people are saying they own that mandate. There are times we made a sort of a reference to the story in the Bible about Solomon and the two women who had an issue with the baby. But so far, we've had issues being raised about them canceling the entire election and then conducting it again without the president being involved. That is to knock out APC and then just conduct it within the PDP and LP. The other one was just about declaring the person that came third as the president. We've also had witnesses that were, presented, and one of the key ones was, I think it was one of the witnesses of the PDP, who also happens to make claims under oath that LP also rigged some votes that belong to PDP. But where we are at the moment, the two parties have finished up their presentation before the court. I mean, the initial one. And the president's legal team will open up their defense, I think, from tomorrow, the 3rd of July.
Yeah.
Which I also believe that the INEC also will put that forward. Before asking for your view generally about the tribunal activities, I mean, in terms of given those aggrieved persons space to present their case, being fair to all the people, including the respondents and the defendants. And of course, I just want to take this when the Labour Party said they've lined up 50 witnesses before the tribunal. I mean, to bring to the tribunal for their trial. But I mean, at the end of the day, they were able to do only, I think, about 6 or so. 6 or 7. And some of the experts they claimed were not even presented.
Yeah.
But in view of general view, I just have to make mention of that because also I think some people have cautioned the contestants, their aggrieved persons or their followers about heating up the polity. Because if somebody says, listen, I have 50 people that are my key witnesses and they're going to come, they're going to say exactly the way it is and go. And at the end of the day, that's never happened. I mean, it also calls a question on our view as citizens on what the court process, especially when it comes to elections, I mean, what it entails, and both the respect we should have for the court and also for the masses that are following. But in general, what's your assessment of the tribunal activities? And of course, are we expecting? I've forgotten the name of Balam, is it Balam Musa or Bala Muhammad? Oh no, Galadima.
Galadima, Buba Galadima.
Listen, there's nothing that is going to happen. So while assessing the comport of the tribunal in allowing all the represented people to present their case, are you going to follow Galadima's view that nothing is going to happen?
Of course, I mean, while I'm not a lawyer, but number one, if
Mm.
not for the sake of probably transparency and justice, I expect the tribunal to have stricken out the petition right from day one for lack of um, evidence and dismiss the suit. Why did I say so? You claim that your mandate was stolen and you want it retrieved. At the same time, you want the elections to be cancelled. So logically, it doesn't make any sense. One, once you said that your mandate is stolen, it means you have the evidence that you won the election. And you should have provided the evidence that you won the election. You didn't do that. Now, if you won the election, you will not go to the tribunal to cancel it and conduct another one. So you can see the now court processes and all that. I don't know how they do it, but the point is you cannot claim ownership of something and then ask the court to take over that, to take away that ownership and reconsider it. It doesn't make any sense. So by going to the tribunal to say that you won the election, you must provide the evidence that you won the election. Okay. So what will be the evidence that you won the election? Your own results that proved conclusively that you won the election. But what evidence did they rely on? The results provided by INEC to show that Tinubu won the election. So you went to court to prove that you won the election. You don't have your own results, not to mention how verifiable the results are or who verified it. But you didn't even provide your own results. You now relied on the person that declared the results to provide his own evidence. And it is the evidence that they used to proclaim someone else the winner. So it's a waste of court's time. That's why I said, but I believe that what the tribunal wants to do is to make sure that everybody has a fair ground so that when they pronounce their results, their judgment, nobody will come and say that the judges have been bought and this and all kinds of crap that they talk about. Because so far, neither the Labour Party nor the PDP has categorically stated that this is how they won the election. All the boxes of result sheets were certified through copies provided by INEC that showed that Tinubu won the election. So what is your evidence? So it's a waste of time. It's a means of remaining relevant. Of course, they exercise their right to go to the tribunal. But you see, that is one other thing we have to look about. We have to think about that the fact that you have the right to go to court or to the
Mm.
tribunal doesn't mean you must do so.
Yeah.
So if they feel truly aggrieved, they can remain in opposition and provide uh, solutions or remain relevant. But look at them. In what ways are they trying to remain relevant? Look at Peter Obi, for example. If somebody dies in a road crash, he will go and make a statement. If somebody crosses the road and misses the way, he will go and make it. I mean, all kinds of ridiculous things just to keep himself in the news.
That's been relevant.
It will be relevant. The other guy, Atiku, that just kept quiet. Well, he knows what is coming. So you can see that it's an abuse of the court process. And even as laymen, if we look at some of the responses of the witnesses, you will start wondering, are the lawyers to the petitioners, are they really lawyers? Because you called an expert witness from Amazon, and Amazon did not authorize that person to come and speak on his behalf. Amazon has its own confidentiality agreement with INEC. So you can't just come because you are working with them and then start talking on their behalf. So these are serious issues that are playing out. And although this is a personal statement, if I were Tinubu,
Yes.
after the case, I will sue the daylights out of both petitioners, especially on the personal issues that have been decided by several courts that they brought up again. And for at another level, AIT, I think it was in 2015 or 2019, aired what they call some kind of documentary on Tinubu, and he sued them. They had to settle out of court. We don't know the content of the settlement out of court. Maybe this is just a conspiracy theory. Suddenly the chairman of AIT died. Maybe some facts are going to be revealed about the settlement on AIT that maybe they cooked them, some kind of issues are going to arise. So I think the tribunal should be courageous enough to hammer the petitioners. Like I said, yes, they have a right to go to court and blah, blah, blah. But the fact that you have that right doesn't mean you must. You consider this, if you know, and they know deep down in their hearts that they lost the election. Otherwise, Peter Obi will not be running around looking for road accidents to make comments on. He will not be tagging along social media comments like he did on the so-called convoy. And all that. So they will not be doing all those things. So they are irresponsible. I mean, this has nothing to do with they are just politically irresponsible, and they should be consigned to the dustbin of history. In whatever manner. So I
Thank
mean,
you very much.
But
because what people were expecting before the course started was that, especially Labour Party says their agents have collated results from their backroom, which show clearly that Peter Obi won. So many people were expecting to see that collated results by their agents, clearly showing where they won and by what margin they were able to, score over both the president and, of course, the candidate of the PDP. But that has not happened. That has yet to happen. I mean, it's not happened because they finished.
It's not even going to happen because they can't come around and then say, we forgot to put this on the banner. No. So they have no case. They should be heavily fined, Papa, so that they won't have money to contest the next election.
Right. Thank you very much for your time, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. I know you are passionate about the federalism, which your group, the Yoruba referendum, is pursuing, which already has a bill before the six Southwest houses of assembly. You've also mentioned on the program in the past about meeting some other interest groups from the South, uh, the Middle Belt, and also I think the indigenous people of Federal Capital Territory. Now that was before this presidency. Now that we have the president is on, and also the president is talking about federalism, are you looking at reconnecting with these interest groups, or you just want to solely focus on the Yoruba referendum part?
Well, we are still going to, I mean, it's connected that the Yoruba referendum is not an isolated endeavor. It's part of refederalizing Nigeria. So, and we, of course, we are going to maintain our contacts and our with the interest group. The changed situation is that, earlier on, we were talking about putting pressure on, starting from the houses of assembly, putting pressure on our houses of assembly through various means and various methods and all that and the petition and all that. Unfortunately, some of the measures we were thinking of taking have been negated by the Yoruba Nation movement.
Right.
At that time we were saying, okay, if necessary, we will go and sit down at the assembly and compel them to do. Nobody is going to do any demonstration now. I mean, especially with the way the Yoruba Nation people have conducted themselves all over the place. So that brings a new reality that, of course, the same situation still subsists. APC is still the dominant party in the West. Even with Osun State going to PDP is not the issue. So we still have to find a way to engage the APC as a party in the West, not just the legislators now, because at this point, it will be a party decision.
Right.
Before the elections, we could put pressure on the legislators to act. But like I said, all the various ways of putting anybody that wants to say you want to go and sit down at the House of Assembly now, they will just think that you want to take over the assembly and a Yoruba nation. So that is one of the major setbacks created by the Yoruba Nation movement. But that's their problem. So now the question is, we now have to engage the APC as a party in the West because they are in the majority. The other parts of the country where APC is not dominant, let's say I think APC is also dominant in the Middle Belt and probably in the Northeast, but not in the South. I think, So, but each one has its own local realities that they have to deal with. The common thread is on that nationality referendum that for example, in the South is not ethno homogeneous like you have in the Southwest. You have so many nationalities in the South or even in the Middle Belt and all that. So their realities are different. Our realities are different. So we have to address our realities. I mean, we have to address the question based on our realities. So if we say we want to engage the Southwest APC on the nationality referendum, we are not going to demand the same from, let's say, South, where they are not in the majority. So they have to engage the dominant party, whether they want referendum or, whether they want federalism or not. That is, whether the parties want federalism or not is not the issue. But if the people demand it, they are bound to do it. It's just that in our own case, it is easier because we have one party that is dominant, and that party has a history of being derived from a long history, a long tradition of the federalist quest in Nigeria. So there is actually no room for them to hide. So once we are able to get the party on board, the assembly people, it will be easier for the assembly to flow along. So, and we will advise the other nationalities to do similarly based on their circumstances. Like in the Federal Capital Territory, the indigenous people in the Federal Capital. And one other thing we discovered was that many of the Nigerian nationalities, many of the nationalities in Nigeria were actually split into different states. So, the Yoruba are homogeneous, so they split us into 5, 6. Then they removed Kwara and Kogi from here. But you have people like the Bogu in the Middle Belt, where the Bogu people were split into Kwara, Kogi, and is it Niger State? You have the Igala split into Enugu State, and is it Benue or whatever state? So you have them all over the place like that. So that is why the realities of each must be taken into consideration, and we cannot prescribe any particular method for anybody. But in our interactions, we can compare experiences. We can look at different forms, and of course, I think the major road to victory will be if the idea is subscribed to in one zone. Let's say we succeed in the Southwest and we have the referendum in the Southwest. That will jumpstart the quest in other areas. So the question is just how to go about doing these things. And I think people are seeing the sense in what we are saying, and we intend to make it more robust as time goes on. And like I said, we are not going to leave the president alone just to be doing his own thing. We are going to remind him, wow, as is it the Rántí Ọmọ Ẹni Tí Wọ́n Ṣe o, know where you are coming from. So because we have that to contend with, and this is the period, and the elections, the 2023 elections clearly show the need for this type of thing that we are talking about. So we are confident, and we trust that God will support us.
Amen. Thank you so much, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. For those that have been on with us, Alagba Femi Odedeyi is from Yoruba Referendum Committee. You could reach him or the organization through yorubaref@gmail.com. The petition for the submitted bill is still online. If you put on Yoruba Referendum Petition, that's the one where you will see the photographs of the speakers. I think some of them have changed now.
Some of them have changed, yeah.
Because the push started before the 2023 elections. So it's not an offshoot of the 2023 elections. So it started before. Yeah. And the question for a nationality referendum was actually addressed to all the contestants, or let's say the three major contestants. And of course, we know Obi did mention that he doesn't find anything wrong with the 1999 constitution. So he's not actually for federalism. And of course, from the program of Alhaji Abubakar as well, while he had a few of state police and co, the other areas where the federating units actually controls the economy, I think some of them are missing from his own manifesto. And while we have the president now, with them even actually constituting a committee within the party in the past to look into the area of federalism. And of course, people will say that when it comes to Nigeria, when it comes to regional government, when it comes to federalism, of course, you put that credit on the Yoruba. So, and we're trusting that the Yoruba that is there now is not the president for Yoruba, but president for all, but that he will have, that muscle and boldness to actually, he's mentioned it already, so it's not about just having the idea now that we will be wishing him to have the idea, but that idea that he had, and he's had it on for many years, that he will have the boldness and the muscle and the wisdom to actually make it happen within his first 4 years. Like people will say that, of course, he's going to use 4 plus 4, which is 8. But we're hoping that in the first 4 years, he will be able to resolve the issue of federalism, so that by the second 4 years, we will be able to have the full benefits of a genuine, a true, whichever adjectives people want to put there, but that we have federalism as it should happen in a democracy. Thank you very much, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And before we know that happen, there will be things to talk about. Yeah. We're hoping also that the issue about petrol, within 2 weeks, I think we should be
something should have
some sort of impact, because like it was said, with the removal of the subsidy or the non-payment of unlawful money to the oil marketers again, obviously they will fight back, but they cannot fight back for too long. After a while, if they find that the president is not budging, they will have to reconsider their stand, whether they want to remain in business, because they can't just keep the oil or the fuel. Or otherwise they will run out of business. So yes, what's happening now is expected, but we know that after a while they will run out of steam, and things will start to get better. So thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you in another 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Most welcome.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much for joining us today. We will be back in another 2 weeks. Remember, you could always send us your comments or your questions on some of the things you want us to discuss on this program. My name remains Samuel Oludare Jirokun, and I shall see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.